She said, "Don't propose. My friends would mock the ring you could afford." So I didn't. 1 year later, I proposed to her coworker with a $10,000 ring in the same place. She was sitting 3 tables away. I'm 29M. My girlfriend at the time, ex now, was Mallory, 28F. We'd been together just over 3 years when this started, living together for one. On paper, it was stable. Good jobs. Shared rent. Weekend routines. The kind of relationship people assume is heading toward a ring. Mallory liked to remind me she had taste. Not preferences, taste. She corrected servers. She returned gifts in front of people. She talked about money like it was a personality trait. Early on, I thought it was confidence. Later, I realized it was judgment wearing nice shoes. The comments crept in slowly. About my car being temporary. About my watch looking aspirational. About how her friends' boyfriends were already established. She never yelled. She never demanded. She just smiled and said things that landed a half-second too late, like you didn't realize you'd been insulted until you were already apologizing. Around our 3rd anniversary, I started thinking seriously about proposing. Not impulsively, methodically. Budget spreadsheets. Savings goals. Quiet research late at night. I wasn't rich, but I was responsible. I wanted something meaningful, not flashy. I even found a small jeweler who talked more about craftsmanship than carats. One night, I floated the idea. Nothing dramatic. Just a someday soon kind of conversation while we were on the couch. She laughed. Not cruelly, worse. Amused. "Don't," she said, still smiling at her phone. "Don't what?" I asked. "Don't propose," she replied. "My friends would absolutely mock the ring you could afford." She finally looked at me then, like she was doing me a favor by being honest. "They're brutal," she added. I'd never hear the end of it. I waited for her to say something else. Something reassuring. Something like, "But I don't care." She didn't. That was the first night I understood something important was being negotiated without my consent. I didn't argue with her that night. That surprised her. She kept scrolling, waiting for me to push back, to joke, to reassure her I'd somehow level up. When I didn't, she glanced over with that irritated look she used whenever I didn't play my part. "You're quiet," she said. "I'm just being realistic." "I know," I replied. That seemed to bother her more than if I'd gotten defensive. Over the next few weeks, the subject kept resurfacing, never directly, always sideways. We'd go to dinner with her friends, and I'd hear it in the subtext. Comments about investment pieces, about standards, about how one friend's fiancé did it right with a ring that actually photographed well. Mallory would laugh a little too loudly, then glance at me to see if I noticed. I noticed. She started sending me screenshots. Influencers showing off engagement rings. Articles about what your ring says about your worth. Once, she forwarded a post with the caption, "This is the minimum." I asked her, carefully, if the ring mattered more than the marriage. She scoffed. "Why do men always say that? It's not either or. It's about effort." Effort, apparently, had a price tag. A few months later, she asked if I was still thinking about proposing. I said I was. "Good," she said. "Just don't embarrass me." That sentence stuck. I started saving anyway. Not aggressively, just responsibly. But something shifted. Every time I looked at rings, I heard her voice. Not excitement. Anticipation of judgment. I realized I wasn't imagining proposing anymore. I was imagining fallout. Then came the night she said it out loud. We were at a friend's engagement party. Big, flashy affair. Champagne tower. Photographer everywhere. Mallory leaned over during the speeches and whispered, "See? This is how it's supposed to look." Later, on the ride home, she sighed and said, "Honestly, I'd rather wait than end up with something sad." I asked what she meant. She rolled her eyes. "You know, a placeholder ring." Placeholder. Like I was temporary too. That was the night I stopped planning a proposal. I didn't tell her. I didn't announce it. I just quietly opted out. She mistook my silence for obedience. And for a while, I let her. Because sometimes the most important decisions aren't loud, they're patient. And I had just started waiting. Once I stopped planning the proposal, something strange happened. I started seeing her more clearly. Without the mental countdown to an engagement, I noticed how often Mallory compared our life to other people's highlight reels. How every dinner out was ranked. How every purchase came with commentary about whether it kept up. How she never once asked what I wanted our future to look like, only whether it would measure up. She noticed the shift too. "You don't talk about the future anymore," she said one night while we were brushing our teeth. Not curious. Accusatory. "I do," I replied. "Just not out loud." She frowned at my reflection. "That's not cute." A few weeks later, She invited me to brunch with her coworkers. I'd met them before in passing, polite, surface-level conversations. This time was different. There was a woman there named Claire. Early 30s, sharp without being sharp-edged. She laughed easily, asked questions, and actually listened to the answers. We ended up talking about work for most of the meal, same industry, different roles. It felt easy, Mallory noticed. On the drive home, she was quiet. Then she said, "You were flirting." "I was talking," I said. "Well, don't," she snapped. "It's embarrassing." That word again. Over the next few months, the relationship coasted. No big fights. No big affection either. Mallory started dropping hints about timelines again, weddings she wanted to attend, venues she liked, rings she accidentally showed me. I nodded, made noncommittal noises. She mistook that for progress. Meanwhile, I got a promotion. Nothing flashy, but meaningful. Better pay. More stability. I told her over dinner. She smiled, then said, "Good. That helps." Helps what? I wondered. Around that time, Mallory started talking more about her coworkers. Office drama. Promotions. Who was dating whom? Claire's name came up a lot. Always neutral. Almost dismissive. "She's nice," Mallory said once. A little plain, but competent. Plain. I didn't correct her. I was starting to understand that Mallory didn't want a partner. She wanted an accessory that reflected well under scrutiny. And I was quietly, steadily becoming someone who no longer needed her approval. The funny thing is, I still hadn't decided to leave. I was just waiting for the moment when staying would feel more dishonest than walking away. That moment was closer than I realized. The moment finally came on a Tuesday night, which felt fitting. Nothing dramatic ever happened with Mallory on weekends. Those were reserved for brunches and optics. Tuesdays were when real conversations slipped out by accident. She came home late, dropped her bag by the door, and announced she'd run into an old college friend who'd just gotten engaged. "No hello. No how was your day?" 3-carat oval, she said, kicking off her shoes. "Custom setting. He did really well." I nodded, not looking up from my laptop. She noticed immediately. "Why do you act like this doesn't matter?" she asked. "It's like you're checked out." I closed the laptop and looked at her. "Because you told me not to propose." She blinked. "That's not what I said." "It is," I replied. "You said your friends would mock the ring I could afford." She waved her hand. "I was being practical. I was saving you from embarrassment." "Mine," I said. She sighed, exasperated. "Why are you holding on to that? I thought you understood." That word again. Understood. As if swallowing it was the correct response. "So what's the plan?" I asked. "Wait until I meet a price point you approve of?" She didn't answer right away. Then she said, "I just want to be proud of what I'm wearing." That was it. Not proud of us. Not excited about marrying me. Proud of the object. I felt something finally settle. "I'm not proposing," I said calmly. She laughed. "You don't have to announce it." "I'm not announcing," I replied. "I'm telling you, so there's no confusion." Her smile dropped. "So you're punishing me now?" "No," I said. "I'm listening." She stood there for a long moment, then scoffed. "You'll come around. You always do." That was the night I realized she thought time was on her side. What she didn't know was that I'd already started imagining a future where I didn't need permission to choose joy. And that future no longer had her in it. The breakup didn't happen all at once. It happened quietly, in pieces, like furniture being removed from a room until one day you realize it's empty. After that Tuesday, Mallory acted like nothing had changed. She sent me listings for rings again. Venues. Pinterest boards titled Timeless Elegance. She talked about when not if. I realized she'd never actually heard me. Or maybe she had, and decided my words didn't matter. I stopped engaging. Not out of spite. Out of honesty. About 2 months later, she suggested we take a break. Not a real break. One of those breaks where you're still expected to wait. "I think some space will help you figure out what you want," she said, magnanimous, like she was assigning homework. I nodded. "You're right." That surprised her. I moved out the following weekend. Took my clothes, my books, the couch I'd paid for. She watched me pack with that same amused patience she'd always had, confident this was temporary, that I'd come back improved. Quieter. More expensive. We stayed loosely in touch. Polite texts. Occasional updates. She posted constantly. Trips. Dinners. Rings on other people's hands with captions about timing and standards. During that year, my life expanded in ways I didn't expect. I focused on work. Got another promotion. Started saving aggressively, not for a ring, but for myself. I traveled. I made friends who didn't rank my worth by objects. I stopped apologizing for being enough. And then, one afternoon, I ran into Claire again. Same easy conversation. Same genuine curiosity. This time, coffee turned into dinner. Dinner turned into weekends. No commentary. No comparisons. No pressure. When I mentioned my past, she didn't flinch, just nodded like she understood what respect should feel like. A year after Mallory told me not to propose, I realized something quietly beautiful. I wanted to. Not because I was supposed to. Not to prove anything. Because this time, it felt like an invitation, not a test. So I went back to that small jeweler. This time, I didn't ask what I could afford. I asked what would last. And I knew exactly where I'd propose. The place Mallory once told me was perfect for photos. She just never imagined who'd be standing there. I didn't rush the proposal. That surprised me too. With Mallory, everything felt like a countdown. How fast I could get somewhere acceptable. How quickly I could prove myself worthy of being chosen. With Claire, there was no timer. Just momentum. The quiet kind that builds because nothing is being forced. I saved for months. Not because anyone told me to, but because I wanted to. I wanted the ring to feel intentional, not defensive. When I finally set the budget, $10,000, it wasn't about flexing. It was about choosing something that reflected how solid everything felt now. The jeweler remembered me. That didn't take as long as I expected, he said with a smile. Neither did clarity, I replied. I picked a ring that didn't scream. Clean lines. Subtle weight. The kind of piece that wouldn't need explaining. When I slipped it into my pocket, I felt calm, not nervous, not anxious. Certain. I chose the place carefully too. The same restaurant Mallory once declared perfect for photos. The one she said would make an engagement feel real. Outdoor seating. Soft lighting. Always crowded on weekends. I made the reservation for a Friday night. Claire thought we were just going to dinner. The night of the proposal, everything went smoothly. Conversation flowed. Food arrived hot. The air felt light. When I stood up and pulled the ring out, there was no script running through my head, just presence. She said yes before I finished asking. Applause broke out from nearby tables. Someone cheered. A server smiled. That's when I saw her. 3 tables away. Mallory. She was sitting with 2 friends, mid-laugh, wine glass in hand, until her eyes landed on me. On the ring. On Claire's hands covering her mouth in shock. On the moment she once told me not to create. The color drained from her face. Our eyes met for half a second. That was all it took. I didn't smirk. I didn't wave. I turned back to my fiancé. And for the first time, I understood how powerful it is to choose someone who never made you feel like you had to earn the right to be loved. I didn't tell Claire about Mallory being there. Not that night. Not on purpose. The moment wasn't about anyone else, and I wasn't going to let an old ghost reach into something that finally felt clean. But Mallory noticed. I know she did, because my phone buzzed before dessert even arrived. A text. From a number I hadn't saved anymore, but didn't need to. Is that you? I didn't respond. Claire was still floating, turning the ring under the table light, laughing at nothing, asking me if this was real for the 5th time. Watching her felt grounding, like standing on solid ground after years of sand. When we left, I felt eyes on my back. I didn't turn around. The next morning, the messages started. First was curiosity. I didn't know you were seeing someone seriously. Then disbelief. That ring looked expensive. Then confusion, sharpening into something else. I thought you said you weren't ready. That one almost made me laugh. By the afternoon, the tone shifted. So that's it. After everything, you really did it there? There, of all places. I still didn't reply. Later that night, Claire noticed something was off. Not because I was distant, because I was quieter than usual. Old history, she asked gently. I nodded. Yeah, but it's done. She didn't push. She just squeezed my hand and said, I'm really glad you chose me. That sentence landed heavier than she probably realized. Because with Mallory, everything felt conditional. With Claire, it felt mutual. The next day, Mallory called. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail. Long, unsteady. She talked about timing. About growth. About how she never said no forever. About how she thought I understood the pressure she was under. Pressure from whom was never clarified. Then she said the line I didn't expect. I didn't think you'd ever actually give that ring to someone else. That told me everything. She hadn't wanted me to propose later. She wanted me to wait indefinitely. And watching me choose someone else, choose joy, had shattered the illusion that she was the prize at the end of the road. For the first time, I didn't feel anger toward her. Just distance. The kind you feel when something no longer has access to you. And I knew this story wasn't over yet. Because Mallory wasn't done trying to rewrite it. Mallory didn't wait long before trying a different tactic. 3 days after the proposal, she showed up at my office. Not storming in. Not crying. Composed. Polished. Dressed the way she always did when she wanted to be taken seriously. Tailored coat. Perfect hair. Neutral makeup that said I'm doing fine even when she wasn't. The receptionist called me and asked if I knew a Mallory. I did. Unfortunately, I met her in the lobby. She smiled when she saw me, like we were old friends who'd just run into each other at the grocery store. Wow, she said, eyes flicking immediately to my hand. So it's real. It is, I replied. She nodded slowly. I just wanted to talk. Not fight. Not make a scene. We stepped outside. She crossed her arms, a familiar posture. I don't understand how you went from not ready to this, she said. With her. I kept my voice calm. I didn't go from not ready. I went from not respected. She laughed lightly. Oh, come on. You know I was pushing you because I believed in your potential. That's not belief, I said. That's pressure. Her smile slipped. So now I'm the villain? No, I replied. You're just not the partner. That hit harder than I expected. I saw it in her face. She took a step back like the words had weight. I never said I wouldn't have said yes, she said quickly. I just wanted it done right. I know, I said. And that's the problem. She scoffed. So you spend 10 grand on a ring for a woman who barely knows you? I smiled. She knows me well enough not to measure me by it. That's when her voice cracked. You did this to hurt me. No, I said. I did this because I was finally loved without conditions. She stared at me for a long moment, then shook her head. You'll regret it. Maybe she believed that. But as I walked back inside, my phone buzzed with a photo from Claire, her hand, my ring, sunlight catching just right. I didn't feel regret. I felt relief. And Mallory, standing alone on the sidewalk, finally looked like someone watching a life move on without her. There were only 2 parts left to this story, and neither of them included going back. After Mallory showed up at my office, the tone shifted everywhere else. Mutual friends who hadn't spoken to me in months suddenly reached out. Casual messages. Hope you're doing well. Crazy running into Mallory the other night. I could feel the information circulating, getting revised in real time. Stories changing shape depending on who was listening. Mallory, apparently, was not handling it well. I heard through the grapevine that she'd left the restaurant early that night, that she'd cried in the bathroom, that she'd told her friends she felt humiliated. Not because I'd moved on, but because I'd done it publicly. In the same place. With a ring that erased every argument she'd ever made about money, readiness, or effort. That detail mattered to her more than anything. She texted me again late one night. I never said you couldn't afford something nice. I just wanted you to grow first. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I typed back one sentence. I did. She called immediately. I didn't answer. She left another voicemail, her voice tight, trying to sound composed. She said she felt like I'd rewritten our entire relationship, that I'd made her look shallow, that people were asking questions she didn't know how to answer. What she never said was I was wrong. Claire noticed the noise around us, but stayed out of it. She didn't stalk Mallory's socials, didn't ask for details. When I told her pieces of the story, she just shook her head and said, I'm sorry you went through that. No competition, no commentary. That was the difference. One afternoon, while we were planning a small engagement dinner, Claire asked me something quietly. Did you ever want to propose to her? I thought about it honestly. I wanted to feel chosen, I said. I didn't realize how much I'd been asking permission. She nodded like that made perfect sense. A few days later, Mallory blocked me. Everywhere. At first, I thought it was out of spite. Then I realized it was survival. Watching me live a life she once thought she controlled was too much. And that's when I understood something important. The ring wasn't what broke her. It was the fact that I'd finally given it to someone who never made me feel small for wanting to offer it. There was only one thing left to do. Close this chapter for good. It's been a few months now, and the noise has finally died down. Mallory never reached out again after blocking me. No last message. No apology. No explanation. Just silence. From what I've heard, she moved apartments, changed friend groups slightly, and leaned hard into the version of herself that insists everything happens for a reason. I don't doubt she believes that. It's easier than accountability. Claire and I didn't rush anything after the proposal. We didn't need to. We planned a small engagement dinner instead of a spectacle. Close friends. Real laughter. No ranking. No commentary about aesthetics. When people complimented the ring, Claire just smiled and said, he chose it. Like that was the end of the story. And it was. Sometimes I think back to that night on the couch when Mallory laughed and told me not to propose. How casual she was. How certain. How convinced she was that time. Pressure and her approval were things she controlled. She wasn't cruel in a loud way. She was cruel in a curated way, the kind that makes you doubt yourself while insisting it's for your own good. Here's what I learned, and why I'm posting this. When someone tells you not to offer them love until it meets an external standard, believe them. They're not asking for patience, they're asking for power. And if you give it, they'll keep moving the line. I didn't propose because I was afraid of being mocked. I proposed later because I finally met someone who would have been happy with a ring pop if it came with sincerity. The irony isn't lost on me that Mallory saw the proposal she wanted, just not with her. But that wasn't revenge. That was consequence. If you're sitting in a relationship where your effort is being priced, ranked, or compared, pause. Ask yourself who benefits from you waiting. Ask yourself who decides when you're enough. Sometimes the most satisfying ending isn't proving them wrong. It's choosing someone who never made you feel wrong to begin with. Thanks for reading.